Good morning, good afternoon, greetings. It is Saturday, so you know what time that means. It is time for a car conversation with Cloyed. I'm praying for every last one of you. I hope that considering the pandemic, as far as coronavirus is concerned and COVID-19, that everyone is well. I know we're in shelter in place, and I know some people are getting cabin fever. Some people are itching and stretching to get out their house and get back to work. I know that there's small businesses affected. I know that there are waiters and waitresses affected. I know that there are daycares that are affected. There are people that are really affected, and I'm praying, one, that God sends healing and that God's hand keeps the coronavirus away, pulls it away rather, and that two, that you're doing well and that you're healthy. But what I wanted to do this week, I've been vacillating between two topics, and one that just kind of really weighed on me as of recent, and then another that I believe God has pressed upon me on both sides. And so I said, man, y'all gonna get two episodes this week. And so with that being said, I want to go ahead and get started. As I told you that when we started this car conversations, that we're going to tackle all different kind of topics, and there's something that I have been shying away from for a while, and I'm gonna go on and tell you why I was shying away from it. But as of recent, I've been kind of watching the news and watching different things, and watching like you. I'm on social media. I look at social media. Some of you may even click on this link from my Facebook page or from my Instagram page. But with that being said, just recently, if you watch the news, you'll see that at the Michigan State House that there's some protesters that went there armed, and them being armed is neither here nor there for this purpose of this. They went there armed, and they went there protesting, and there had been some comparisons to how the response to them protesting versus the response to Colin Kaepernick protesting by kneeling during the national anthem for football games. And so I wanted to touch on that because it kind of weighed on me. And I normally don't talk about these things. I had not talked about them. I shied away from it, and it was eating at me. I didn't talk about it because I was afraid. If I'm being honest, I'm afraid, and I was concerned about how it would affect some of my relationships, because I have strong thoughts about it. But I have friends and relationships from all type of walks of life. Some people grew up in the projects in the hood. Some people grew out in the country. Some people grew up in the trailer park. Some people grew in the suburbs, and some people grew up in well. And this is from well, and they came from means. And this is from both sides of the spectrum. This is not just black or white. This is everybody. And so I would be lying, and I want to be transparent and honest, and I hope this frees someone else to be transparent and honest. And I didn't take certain stances because of those relationships and how it affect those relationships and how it affect the people. Because while there are people that I disagree with on political and civil rights issues and things of that nature, I still love them. They're like I've served in the military with them, and like we served side by side. And some people I call brother and sister, and I do mean that. And so I would be lying to say that I was not concerned about that, because I was. And so, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm ashamed to say that I did not step out and do it, but at the same time, I'm hoping that this is the right time that my voice is heard, and that this is the right time to do it. And so, with that being said, as I saw comparisons between the two, things, and people saying that you can't compare Colin Kaepernick's protest, where people were in the arrest and they felt that it was what's the word I'm looking for? unpatriotic is the word I'm looking for, and that the protest in Michigan, this is patriotism and honor, and it kind of, this is where it tweaked me, because I've seen these comments and thoughts, and how people would say that Colin Kaepernick's protest was at the wrong time. He was choosing the wrong platform, the wrong time to do it. And I always had the question, when is the right time for civil disobedience? When is the right time to protest injustice? And who gets to decide? Who gets to decide when is the right and when is the wrong time? Who gets to decide that this is the perfect time and that this is the wrong time? Who's the decision makers? And then and as I begin to meditate on this, as I begin to pray about this, as I begin to really delve into this mentally, one of the things that really popped out in my head was that there is no right or wrong time. That's just the reality of it. There is no right or wrong time to protest. Well, let me get it. I don't think there's a wrong time to protest. That's just, if we're just being honest. I think that we say that when it disrupts our peace, when someone protesting on the highway disrupts your ability to transport, even though you feel like there's no way. But the real truth of it is a protest. Civil disobedience is meant to disrupt. It's meant to get the attention of whoever. Sometimes it's to get the attention of the protesters. I mean, not the protesters, of the powers that be. Sometimes it's to get the attention of the oppressors. Sometimes it's to get the attention of those that are bystanders, that are not, that they've just been living their life ignoring what was going on, or they've been quiet what was going on. And my thought on this, my concern about this is that we now must understand that protests were always meant to disrupt. Protests were not meant to be comfortable. It wasn't meant to be comfortable. It wasn't meant for you to be able to continue to go about your day during the protest. It was meant to disrupt. I can give you examples, and that's what I'm going to do, because I feel like without examples you won't understand it. So let us go back to before this nation was formed, when we were just 13 colonies. And it was the thought to cause civil disobedience. Now, civil disobedience definition is to civilly break a law that you feel breaks a higher law, whether it's a higher law of faith, whether it's a higher law of morality. It is literally about breaking breaking that up, because you feel that there's a higher level or code of morality. And so, that being the case, that during this time, and I want to point your attention to the Boston Tea Party. This was in itself that when the forefathers of this nation went into the Boston Harbor and threw the tea into the water to disrupt, to say no taxation without representation, to disrupt the status quo of Great Britain ruling over what is now the United States, but was then with the 13 colonies. When they did that was considered civil disobedience. That was considered a form of protest. And it was meant to get the attention of Great Britain to say, listen, we will no longer be taxed without representation. We will no longer be oppressed. We will decide to make decisions on our own. We will form a democracy, and we will have a republic. That's what we will do. The idea was to get the attention of Great Britain, and to civilly, some people will say that it was not that civil, but to cause civil disobedience. Now, I'm sure that if you would go back during this time, that you would find that the powers that be, the king and queen, the monarchs of Great Britain, who at that time governed what is now the United States, but then was the 13 colonies, who governed that, they would have said that this is not the correct way, this is not the right way, this is not the great format, and this is not the time. This is not how we do, this is not how we conduct business, and this is not how we make decisions. But if you were to ask, if you were to ask the settlers, our forefathers, they would say that any time is the right time to fight injustice. That's what you would hear them say. Any time is the right time to fight injustice. Anytime. And we believe that. We look back at that as a great moment of patriotism. It was the birth of our nation. It wasn't not even when the Declaration of Independence was signed, but it was at this moment. It was in this moment where we, a country, stood up for ourselves and said, we will not be oppressed. And we would agree. Because we now have hindsight. In fact, if we truly understand that they were breaking a law that had the this comes from one of my movies. One of my favorite movies is National Treasure, and the protagonist, the lead character, is played by Nicolas Cage, and he draws to the fact that had the Union, not the Union, but United States lost the war, they would have been hung, castrated, and made on a public display because they broke the law, because that was treason. They were literally committing treason. But what was treason to Great Britain was a revolution to America. Now, let us fast forward from that time to the Civil Rights Movement. Now, if you were to ask any person that believes them to be of good moral character and good moral fiber, to believe that and equality of races, and equality not mattering of your skin, your religion. If you ask a normal person, I wouldn't say a normal person, but a person that identifies as this, they would say that the Civil Rights Movement was necessary. I'm talking white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever they would believe that it was necessary and it was the right way to do it. But if we go back to those times, we have proof that there was open opposition to this. We have proof that people truly believed that this was not the way, that if you would allow things to run its course, that it would naturally evolve. It would naturally evolve into something, to being better. That's what they would tell you. That's what they believe. I have proof. If you've ever read the book Letters to the Birmingham Jail or Letters from the Birmingham Jail, and if you've read those, and if you've read Martin Luther King's Why We Can't Wait, it was in response to the letters to the Birmingham Jail by evangelicals in Birmingham, that and saying that not President, but Dr. King should leave, and this is not the time to protest. This is not the time to boycott. This is not the time. This is them saying that this is not the correct manner. This is not the right method. You should not do it. This is not the right time. It almost sounds very eerily similar to those people that are now telling Colin Kaepernick that he should not kneel because it was not the right time. So this brings the question: when is the right time to protest? How is the right way to protest? Is it to where that it causes no disturbance? To where that people can still go about their lives normally? Because we have hindsight, and we can say that the Greensboro that when they sat inside, because I'm in North Carolina, when they sat at that counter at Woolworth, they did sit in. We would say that it was the right time to call civil disobedience. We would say that because we have now hindsight, and we can see what happened. And we were birthed in a time where equality is meant to be the status quo. I'm not saying that it is the status quo, but it's meant to be the status quo. But back then, equality was not the status quo. It was an appearance of equality and separate but equal, but it was not. You don't think that the Montgomery bus boycotts what created discomfort to people? Discomfort into people's wallets, and discomfort into what people were able to bring in, discomfort, and it was discomfort not just on the side of those that were affected by the boycott in a way that they weren't making money. It wasn't just It wasn't just discomfort to the people that worked at the for the bus station or the bus companies, but it was discomfort for those that used the buses, but decided to boycott it because they had to find a ride. They still had to go to work. They still had to provide for their family, but they had to find a different method to get to work. Understand that even during this time, there were the African Americans that believed in the cause, but at the same time, they while they believed in the cause, at the same time, they still needed a job because they still worked for the bus station. These are African Americans that believed in the cause, and so imagine the torture and the weight that they felt, feeling conflicted, because they can't afford to quit, but they cannot afford to ignore the reality of it, and forced to pick a side. The protest is meant to cause discomfort. When Martin Luther King and they marched to Selma, and on that bridge, and plenty of people wrote to King, plenty of people wrote to him and said not to do this. Don't do this. We have record even of J. Edgar Hoover threatening Martin Luther King, saying that this is not the right time. There are plenty of examples where they say that this is not the right way, this is not the right time, choose another time, choose another way, just wait. And Martin Luther King penned the book, the response, Why We Can't Wait. We can't wait. So it then begs to question is that what and when is the right time? What is the right way? Because when Colin Kaepernick began kneeling, and those that felt that their football, their Sundays were disrupted, they were like, how dare you take something as sacred as football and disrupt it by getting the attention of something that you believed in? How dare you bring politics into sports? How dare you? Because somehow you, the athlete, is supposed to be able to separate all of that. The fact that you have a conscience and something is bothering you about it. Something internally is bothering you about that you need to stop doing this, because that while you say that you have a problem with this, you should not do this right now. Figure another way to do it. And then when we ask people, what is another way to do it? This is when they say that this is not the right time. I would ask them, people that I love, people that I served with, I asked them, when is the right time? And they could not answer. When we in Charleston, when people were boycotting and standing on the roads, and they would say, well, this is not the right time. Why would you choose rush hour? The idea of a protest is disrupted to get attention. So that was the perfect time to do it. Well, if they get hit, they just get hit. That's what they deserve. Because this is not the right time. These are people that I respect that's saying this. This is not the right time. So when is the right time? When it's not rush hour, when they won't get anybody's attention? What is the right platform? If I know that everybody, when I say everybody, well, a large amount of people, millions of people are now watching Sunday football, are now watching Monday Night Football, is it not then the right time to get the most attention? Those people that consider themselves bystanders, that they consider them to be, shouldn't that be when I get their attention? Shouldn't that be the time? But somehow Colin Kaepernick is not a patriot. He is everything but his name, actually. He's a communist. He's this, and they called him all kind of things. They called him all these different things, and everything but a patriot, everything but his name. And so my question is, what is really the difference? Is it the obvious? Is it the obvious is that it's two things. It's obvious that if you don't agree with it, it's not a valid protest. Does that mean is it obvious? Or is it that you don't care? Or is it that you don't politically align with it, so you don't care? Is it because that protest doesn't disrupt the flow of what you're doing? A protest is meant to disrupt the flow of what you're doing. It's not meant to be this thing where you're unimpeded. It is meant to get your attention. Yes, it's meant to get the attention of those that are in power, but it's also to get the attention of those that have just been bystanders. And I do not use the word innocent bystanders, because if you are watching injustice, then you're not an innocent bystander. You are a bystander. If you are okay, if you think not to say anything about injustice, then you're not an innocent bystander. If you don't vote about injustice, if you don't participate in the fight for justice, one way or other, we cannot argue these things. There were injustices that Colin Kaepernick observed. Whether you agree or disagree, you can agree on his reason for protesting. You can agree or you can disagree, but you cannot tell this person that they do not have the right, or that they're protesting. And you can't tell me you agree with what he's protesting about, and that he should use his platform, but he should not do it in just this way. He's not killing anybody. He's not hurting anybody. He is peacefully on the knee. Well, he's disrespecting the flag. He's disrespecting the troops. You cannot truly believe that when he sat down with a veteran, when he sat down with a troop. And because at first he was sitting down, and after talking with him, he amended the way that he was protesting. So, what is it? Do only certain people get to decide what is patriotism, or what is the correct way to protest, or what's worthy of protesting? It scares me. It scares me for several reasons, because we as Christians generally believe that our stance is God's stance. But when is the last time, I'm asking sincerely, that you prayed before taking a stand, before getting on social media and making your statement, before tearing down someone or before uplifting someone, you took the stance to say, let me go and pray and see what my God says about it? Because most of the time, whether you're evangelical or gospel, or if you identify yourself as a Christian, most times we are not going to the altar of the Lord. We are not going to seek God's face on our decisions and our stances. Our stances alone. And then we assume that because we've taken this stance and we happen to be Christian, that God is going to back, that Christ is going to back us because it's us. Rather than going to Christ first and saying, Christ, is this where you would stand? And this is whether you're for or against the protest, whether you're for or against it. I'm not saying the protesters that are in Michigan are wrong. It's not for me to say. They have every right to go there and protest and disrupt the status quo. They have every right to do it. If it makes you uncomfortable, then they have served their purpose. The protest is meant to make you uncomfortable. If they got your attention, they disrupted your television watching, then they did what they were supposed to do, because they disrupted to let you know that they were unhappy, that they did not agree with the decision, and they believe that there is a higher moral law, a higher moral ground that is being disrupted by this law. Whether you agree or disagree, they have that right. And that there is no right or wrong. This is not about whether you agree or disagree. Now, we can have a conversation about the reason why you disagree, but your discomfort can't be the reason why it's not the right time to protest. If he believes in his heart of all hearts that this demands attention, and I agree with him, that some of the issues that were going on, the things that were going on, people being shot by the cops saying that they feared for their life, never considering the fact that when you have a gun on you, you fear for your life too. And never considering the fact, if this person, if the normal person that has a gun on them, that has a gun drawn on them, cop or not, are afraid for their life. And we cannot expect normal behavior, normal discourse, when you fear for your life. We say that when it is turned on the police. The police fear for their life. They have every right to defend it. They have every right not to act under normal circumstances. But i.e. a Trayvon Martin now has this man following him, and at this point he fears for his life. At this point it's fight or flight. At this point he has every right not to act normal, and he is and this person is not even a cop. He has every right. So even when the police officer, we're talking about the incident even in Dallas, when this woman kicks in the door and now has a gun pointed to this man and saying that he is not listening to the commands, he's just moving in the dark. He has every right to fear for his life and not act normal. So that means that you have the ability, you have the right to be upset, and you have the right to use your platform every inch that you have. I can understand if Colin Kaepernick was protesting with no other action, but his other action, he was using his own money to do the Know Your Rights campaign. He's doing all the proceeds that he can get, and all the money that he has, he's putting it back into the foundation to educate and to get out there and to do more. What else is there to do? Why is it that what he is doing is the wrong time, is the wrong thing to do? How do you decide when is the right time to protest? When is the right time for civil disobedience, rather? Is it only, do we have to wait years down the line as we see things change? Because we have to realize that we believe a lot of times how we paint the civil rights movement, because we're learning in a history book, we think the civil rights movement was one chapter in a history book, but this was years in the making. This is through the Emancipation Proclamation. This is through Jim Crow. This is through the civil rights. This is through the actual time span of the civil rights, and this is even beyond that. Are we? I know this is supposed to be a conversation. It feels like I'm preaching and lecturing, so let me bring it back down some. How do we decide? Or do we have to wait years down the line to see the change that may have taken place, to see the attention that come back to say this was a valid boycott? I'm not worried about you being on the wrong or right side of history. I'm not worried about it. It's not my concern. But this conversation, this hope is that you would look at this and that you would sit down and be introspective and realize that there is no set time, and we don't get to decide when the protest goes. It's meant to disrupt. Civil disobedience is meant to break a law. There's sometimes where you know that you're going to be arrested, and it's okay. You prepare for it. There's sometimes where you know that you're going to be the discomforted by the boycott, by the protest, but you prepare for it. You welcome it. This is not to get you to stop talking about it. This is not for you to not rant and this and that. You can rant, but I want you to consider what makes a protest worthy, what makes a protest to be patriotic and filled with patriotism and honor, what makes and when is the right time to protest. When is the right time for civil disobedience? And it can't be only when you're comfortable with it. To my Christian brothers and sisters, it can't be that. It can't be. It can't be that you feel comfortable with it, and that has to be God's will. Did you consider that this may have been God's will? That the protest may have been God's will? And a lot of you say, we don't even know if Colin Kaepernick is a Christian. That's neither here nor there. It's neither here nor there. The media doesn't get to decide whether the protest is right. The media doesn't get to decide whether this person's doing good cause. I've watched people such as Tommy Loren, and she talked about how when Beyonce did her Super Bowl thing and it formed the Black Power Fist, and how about Malcolm X and this and that, and how the Black Panther Party was this party. Of course, if you're writing the book, of course, but it doesn't talk about the good things. We're not talking about the new Black Panther. I'm talking about the original Black Panther Party, Huey Newton. We're talking about those things, the free lunch programs and the thing that they did. But most times people only have a portion of the history, and they present that to be the whole history. If people look at if we look at the portion of American history, there's dark times in our history. I'm not even saying that they're all dark, but there's dark times in our history. And if you look only at the dark times and only purport that to be the sum total of what America is, then some would say that America is not worth celebrating. But America is not just this, it's still growing and it's still writing its story. And it is my prayer, it is my hope, it is my sincere effort that each day that I'm on this earth, that I can help it to become a better. And that should be that is patriotism. Patriotism is that if we want to talk about patriotism and carrying the flag, it is that each step on this earth is helping the country where you live become better, to be better represented. I have nothing else. Because I keep on going. I'm excitable, and I don't want this to be too long. I already given you guys 2 episodes. So I may continue this, and we can have the civil discourse. If you have a comment, question, concern, make a comment. Hit me up on Facebook. Hit me on Instagram. Hit me on Twitter. All those different things. And we can have this conversation. We really can. We can have this conversation. I'm open to it. But I end how I started. Civil disobedience. When is the right time? God bless you. God love you. Remember, never let your independence rob you from your dependence on God. Until next time, you have just watched Car Conversation with Cloyed.